Welcome to Incredible Idaho. I'm Jack Hemingway. Tonight, let's start our show by going for a spin. The incredible maneuverability of the helicopter has completely changed the way scientists go about finding information out about wild animals. From surveying our wilderness rivers for salmon nests to capturing bighorn sheep in the high desert country, the helicopter has become the tool of choice. In a state as immense and rugged as Idaho, it's the only way biologists can efficiently employ the sophisticated scientific methods of today. But these machines don't fly themselves. There's a whole team of skilled and talented helicopter pilots, specially trained and licensed to work with wildlife. One of the most experienced of these is helicopter pilot Jim Popp.
You have to be a little careful coming into these areas. You got trees on both sides.
Pilot Jim Popp is delivering young salmon smolts by the bucketful into their historic home, the rugged terrain of the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness Area.
The bucket has a tendency to swing you the helicopter one way or another, so you have to stabilize your bucket before you drop down into this.
It's a tricky operation that would be impossible to accomplish without the skills of an experienced pilot. Jim manipulates the ship deftly through the tall timber, moving slowly into position above the river.
You try to get as close to the water as you can.
A few feet above the water, he pauses, delicately hovering, and then presses the release. The small fish drop into the crystal clear mountain stream, and the helicopter pulls gently away.
Well, we're up and out of there again.
25 years, Jim Popp has been flying Idaho fish and game biologists on wildlife surveys or slinging animals beneath one of his 4 Hiller helicopters. In fact, he probably has logged more time, approximately 24,000 hours, in Hiller aircraft than any other pilot. He knows the rugged, remote backcountry of Idaho, and his keen eyesight and extraordinary flying ability have earned the respect and admiration of wildlife biologists.
I think the main thing that makes Jim Popp unique and as a pilot is just his years of experience. I think he's at least on his 3rd generation of biologists right now. He's trained several of us on how to see animals, and he's got one of the strongest grasps of geography around the state. He's been kind of a constant, and biologists have come and gone. So that's probably Jim's main strength. He provides us with a lot of confidence in his abilities. He's been around a long time, and he pretty much knows how to handle almost every situation.
Research biologist Jim Unsworth speaks from experience. He and Jim Popp captured over 150 elk in the course of a 6-year research study conducted in the rugged Laxaw River country.
Usually what happens, we find an animal that's in pretty rugged terrain or in timber. We have to move them along the side hill a little bit until they get to an opening. Then we can go in, get a dart in them, land the helicopter, and hike to them.
On most of Jim's flying contracts with Fish and Game, his role seems to fluctuate significantly between helicopter pilot and research assistant.
You know, the biologist usually can stand some help, you know, and pilot, I like to get, you know, in the middle of things, so to speak, anyway. And so I enjoy working with the animals, so I do enough of it that you know, you pick it up.
Jim began his flying career in the U.S. Air Force pilot training program. He had earned a degree in construction engineering from Washington State University, and after his stint with the military, decided to join his father in the construction business.
I missed the flying after I got into it, so I bought my own helicopter and just worked my way back into the helicopter business and planned on doing this for maybe 10 years, you know, and so it's been 25. So I haven't been back in the construction business since.
Every day is a different adventure, and every adventure requires different equipment. Buckets, slings, and helicopters are interchanged depending on the job demands. Jim uses both the piston engine 12E Hiller and this ship, the Hiller 12EJ4 turbine.
And it's good for high altitude flying, you know, and it's a good workhorse type machine. They're not as fast, but they're a good heavy lift machine, and they're real dependable.
A dependable ground crew is another essential element in the helicopter business.
264, this is Unit 1.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what's your location? How you doing?
Okay, I'm headed back. I'm about 5 or 6 minutes out. I'll be going over the saddle here above Powell.
Okay, will you need fuel this time?
Just pull it over there. Affirmative. I'll probably take on about another 10 gallons.
Jim's wife, Janet, schedules the jobs, drives the fuel truck, and fills the role of air traffic controller in sometimes tricky situations that occur at these remote sites.
Okay, forward, down. Down a little more, down. Okay, hold it. Okay, he's got you hooked up, straightening up. Okay, he's clear.
Jim has intentionally kept the business small, hiring only one other pilot besides himself. He loves the flying, and being a hunter and angler especially enjoys working with wildlife.
Oh, the best thing is a variety, you know, and I like working with the people and the animals, and you know, that's mainly what I enjoy. You don't get, you know, there's something different going on every day, and you don't, they're always finding something else to do with a helicopter. If they can't do it any other way, well, then they'll say, well, we'll go see if we can get it done with helicopters.
What you're going to end up with is a bird that's similar to this. You can see we have the basic design, and the wing pockets I've already put in place and actually have carved in some of the more...
Long before man ever dreamed of flying anything as sophisticated as a helicopter, he was fashioning models of birds like this to lure waterfowl down from the skies to the earth. Evidence found in a cave in Nevada suggests that there was an early tribe of Indians called the Tule Eaters who fashioned decoys like this made out of cattails. Despite the passing of time, there's a sort of kindred spirit linking those early hunters and decoy artists with the waterfowlers of today. For what greater respect can man give beast than the flattery of imitation?
Yeah, waterfowling to me has been pretty much what I'm about. It's everything I do is associated with waterfowling, either retriever training or decoy building, or even getting into the calls and building calls, and you know, learning about waterfowl and their needs and where they are, and you know, what they need to survive.
Dan Papp's fascination with waterfowl goes beyond the ordinary interest of many hunters. He's become a collector and somewhat of a scholar on the history of waterfowling and the American folk art associated with it, especially decoy building.
Yeah, you get into the romance of it to where you want to maybe go back to an earlier time and not necessarily enjoy the larger limits, but romancing all the decoy spreads and old batteries that they shot from, and experience some of the things that they may have experienced back at the turn of the century.
The turn of the century marked the gradual decline of big market hunting in the United States, and with it, the manufactured decoy. As a result, a new folk art was born, as decoys evolved from a functional necessity to a skilled craft designed and built by individual waterfowl hunters. Dan carries on the tradition today, creating all his own decoys in a small workshop at his home.
You start with a plan, and the idea is to lay all the views out to have some idea as far as what the bird is going to look like when it's finished, and have that on paper.
The plan becomes a pattern that's traced on an air-dried block of cypress wood. One piece for the head and another for the body of the bird. Dan uses a bandsaw to cut away the square edges, carefully following the pattern laid out on the wood. This decoy is designed to imitate a mallard drake.
Well, to me, it doesn't necessarily have to be ornamental. To me, it's a function of, like any tool, it's utilitarian. And so what I'm looking for is something that's going to float very well and is going to act like the real bird when you place it in the water. And then it has the nice, graceful lines to the bird. Not that you have every feather in place and not that much detail, but the lines are nice. Okay, after we finished blocking it out, that's basically what we've done here. We've added 2 dimensions. We'll go ahead and set it in the vise and make it 3-dimensional by rounding it off.
This step can be accomplished the old-fashioned way with a tool called a draw knife. But another option, and perhaps a more efficient method, is a tool called a cut saw, powered with electricity.
Eventually what you're going to end up with is a head that looks something like this. This is a finished head, same style as you can see, but still a long way from where you want to be. The next step you'd want to do is go ahead and attach it to your decoy and probably set the eyes in place.
Dan runs a large bolt through the keel and the body of the decoy to the double-headed screw embedded in the head. This will allow the head to swivel from side to side. Taxidermy eyes add a touch of realism. All that remains to be done is the priming and the painting. Dan's not the first waterfowl lover to spend his free time crafting decoys. He walks in the footsteps of famous carvers dating back to the time of America's Civil War. Decoys from certain artists and eras have become collector's items. These days, a rare decoy can fetch over $300,000 at an auction.
This decoy is pre-Civil War, actually, 1860, made by a gentleman by the name of John Daddy Holly. And this particular decoy is typical of the Chesapeake-style decoy, and this gentleman actually is considered to be the father of the Chesapeake style of decoy, what they call the Chesapeake style. This is a canvasback species.
Other famous carvers of the Chesapeake school were Madison Mitchell and Charlie Joyner. This canvasback is an example of Mitchell's work, carved sometime around 1920. Lead cast weights and distinctive feathering details are typical of the period. This example of Charlie Joyner's work dates from the 1950s.
And I think he went into quite a bit of detail on this. As you can see, the bright blue and the speculum, which appeals more to the hunter than it actually does to the birds, and the feather detailing that he put into this. Most decoys, even during this period, were not quite as detailed as this is, and this was actually used as a gunning decoy. But a fine example of the Chesapeake style that Charlie Joyner was doing.
A Canadian species of redhead inspired this decoy built in the early 1920s in Ontario. It's a different style than the Chesapeake school, sporting a flat bottom with no keel, allowing it to float in any direction. And this pintail is an example of an Illinois river decoy. It was crafted by carver Robert Elliston in the 1890s. Typical of this style is what Dan calls vermiculation, the wavy lines in the feathering created by running an old English metal comb over the lead paint. In each of these beautifully fashioned decoys is a reflection of the love and respect of the hunter for his prey.
Oh, this takes me back to the time that we will never see again, the day when men saw waterfowl that darkened the sky, something man will never see again. This was actually built by individuals that, and I'm holding a piece of history here from those earlier times that it kind of links me back in some way to that time with those men, and I still share the enthusiasm of going out and setting out these decoys and seeing birds work to something that's man-made.
We brought you several stories on Incredible Idaho involving radio telemetry. It's a wonderful tool that scientists can employ to study the movements and habits of some of our more secretive species, such as this wolverine. But it's only recently that this technology has become miniaturized enough to be adapted for the study of fish. For the past 2 years, fisheries biologists have been surgically placing radio transmitters such as this in the body cavity of native bull trout, a secretive species that seems to favor Idaho's remote backcountry streams. But even with this technology, the task of tracking and monitoring this species poses a considerable research challenge.
So everybody's below.
It's country like this, steep, craggy, and incredibly beautiful, that cradles the remote streams where bull trout come to spawn. Tangled underbrush protects plunging creeks that tumble and roar, crashing through log jams and rocks in their headlong rush to become rivers. Somewhere in this vast, rugged area, there are bull trout lurking, hidden in the shadows beneath undercut banks and lush, overhanging vegetation.
Okay, at 095 we got, who am I looking for next?
315.
315. And they heard it from the air today, right?
Before we go hiking in these kind of systems, the drainages are so large that we could hike forever. And really the only way to get a feel for what we're looking at before we go for the logistics and where to actually go is to fly.
In the early morning, a crew of biologists surveys the target area from the air. Antennas are fixed to the wings of the aircraft to pick up the tiny blip of a signal transmitted from a radio-marked bull trout somewhere far below. Its location is charted as accurately as possible on a map of the area. Then, this information is passed on to the ground crews. Their job is to battle through the dense foliage in search of this elusive fish.
Yeah, he's right in front of us somewhere. No problem yet. He's got to be over there in the brush somewhere. We'll find him.
We're trying to understand bull trout habitat and the movement patterns of the fish, and they are difficult to study, and we need to know more about bull trout habitat, what they use to spawn and what's important to this fish. And since they're so secretive, it's something that hasn't been worked on.
Come back here.
You see him?
Yeah.
Oh, I see him too.
For years, Idaho's native bull trout has been considered a nuisance fish. In fact, in the early part of this century, there was actually a bounty on bull trout. This attitude took a toll on the population. Today, bull trout occupy only the far corners of their original habitat. But man has come to realize that although the bull trout is a predator species, one that eats other fish to survive, predators too make up an essential part of our ecosystem. Now, some are considering placing the Idaho native on the endangered species list. This study, a cooperation between the U.S. Forest Service Intermountain Station and the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, may yield critical information about the status of this fish.
Okay, well, one of the principal questions that we're trying to address with this study is, what is it about this system, this drainage, that makes it a good drainage for bull trout? And the approach that we're taking in doing that is to try to specifically describe the characteristics of the habitat that the fish are using. So we're doing what we call a habitat typing procedure.
Okay, it'll be 3.6 for the second width.
When a bull trout is spotted, a nearby branch is flagged and the biologists take measurements of the segment of stream that the fish is using.
You want to get a depth on that pocket pool right away? One of the things that we've seen the fish appear to key on is overhead cover, whether it's boulders or submerged logs like this or overhanging vegetation. Cover seems to be very important.
If biologists can paint an accurate picture of the habitat bull trout need to survive and flourish, these areas can be identified and protected. Then not only will Idaho's native bull trout be preserved, but the spectacular sheltering country surrounding these remote streams will be conserved as well.
That's really where my passion lies with my work, is putting things back where maybe they were 100 years ago. And I think bull trout are kind of a throwback. They tend to be in areas that are less affected by man.
Passion is the right word. They're a unique fish and they're secretive and they're hard to work on, and you get involved with the fish. And
bull trout are a part of our Idaho heritage, another small share of the natural legacy that our generation has an obligation to preserve for the next.
they can grow big, and anglers and people who don't fish can look at a 30-inch bull trout in one of these small streams in the future, and that seems really important.
Tonight, as we close our show, we'll take you to the blue waters of Payette Lake. It may be the twilight of the summer season, but on this mountain lake, sunshine and sailboats still abound.